Today we have Nick Babic, who ran for as a candidate for MVP of Windsor-Tecumseh. Also, he has a TikTok channel with millions of views, and he has his interpretation of what's about to come in August. Today, to be aware of this, I believe we set the stage and demolished the Georgia Guidestone food processing plants and burning to the ground the Hoover Dam, which has just a minor explosion. Fortune 100 is signaling an economic collapse and a financial depression, and things in Ukraine, the proxy war that will pop up. I believe we are already in World War III, and historians will actually prove that point. Whoever writes and wins the war will write the history books. That we are engaged in a geopolitical conflict now, and while Americans are distracted by culture politics like with abortion and other issues, they're not really paying attention to what's really going to stay diligent. Please like and share this video and get out there to your friends and family that need to be aware of this critical information. Moscow threatens the West, not just the United States and also Europe. Also, he annexed various Ukrainian territories and has been going for 4 years now, but now officially annexing more territory, redrawing the map. They're using climate action to avoid fossil fuels and using AI and Bill 11 to govern social platforms. What's your views on these topics and what's coming up soon? Welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, thanks, Sean. I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry that I didn't dress more appropriate.
Hey, it's summertime. It's summertime.
Well, as far as that war in Ukraine, a lot of people don't understand that the borders that are around Ukraine are not all recognized by every nation in the world. They're not recognized borders. And technically, Ukraine is still a part of Russia. It is not a separate country as everyone thinks that it is. Now, number two, with the war in Ukraine, that has absolutely no bearing on the West whatsoever for inflation. The inflation that we're seeing right now is coordinated global inflation that has been created. Inflation itself is created. It does not exist. And I know you're going to sit there and tell me that, you're wrong, it exists, because the words exist. Now, a lot of people don't understand that back in 1973, the OPEC countries created cost-push inflation and demand-pull inflation. Those two words were actually created. And if you were to go and Google this, you will find that they were created once the West put an embargo on the Arab countries that produce oil because of the war that they had with Israel. What's coming next? Well, the reason why the gas prices are so high, and before I tell you anything further, now you have to understand that Canada has never been dependent on oil from Russia. 100 years ago, we didn't get oil from Russia. 50 years ago, we did not get oil from Russia. Yet, they want us to believe that we consume and we purchase that much oil from Russia. These are the things that you need to go and look up on the government website. I ended up doing that, and I found that in 2019, 3% of Canada's oil actually came from Russia. In 2020, that 3% went away. And also, you need to know that Canada is actually self-sufficient. We have enough supply for the demand for oil. And once you realize that it's not just us, the United States, they're also in the same position. They're drilling for oil out in the Gulf of Mexico. You've got them in Texas, Alaska. There's a couple other states. And Joe Biden decided that they're not going to pump any oil. And therefore, you can understand how the United States technically would have inflation. But at the same time, when President Trump was in office, he filled up America's oil reserves. They have more than enough oil for the demand of people. And when you talk about supply and demand, because that's what inflation is. We've been indoctrinated to believe this, and when we are educated at school, when you take, for instance, consumer ed, any type of business class that we have in our school. When I went to school, it was called consumer education, and there they teach you about inflation. I don't understand why they would teach you about that, but I do understand, because a lot of things that we're taught in school, it's made to sink in, because it's repetitive. It's every single day that you're hearing it 5 days a week for the entire year, and therefore it really sticks in your head, like science. When I think about science, I think about, photosynthesis, how we need sunlight for the human body, for your D3. You need sunlight for plants, for flowers, for crops. They need that sunlight, and that's photosynthesis. And then I remember, volatile organic compounds, and you've got, your CO2 and nitrogen, which are on the science periodical table. So saying that CO2 and nitrogen are climate change is absolutely false, because that would be anti-science. With the World Economic Forum, you have a group, and a large group at that have thousands of members, and you have to remember that those thousands of members, they pretty much control 80% of what we wear, material things, what we're drinking, and what we're eating. And when they control that much, they set the prices. They can make the prices however you want, whenever you want, just simply by saying that it's inflation. They have to create it somewhere. They have to get the people to believe that, for instance, Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine, you research this and you find out what are their major exports. It's not oil. That goes to Russia. Ukraine, you've got computer chips. You have wheat. You have grain. You've got beans, corn, and corn oil. These are the things that Ukraine offers, and Ukraine's major trade partner is with African nations. It's not with Europe, and it's not with North America. The majority of it is Africa. And you have to sit there and you have to think to yourself, I researched for my campaign running for MPP about wheat, because they say Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, the breadbasket of Europe. So I went to research how much wheat Canada produces. We produced 26 million tons 2 years ago, and we export 32 million tons. So we're actually consuming 6 tons of wheat that is consumed by Canada. The rest is exported. We're making money from it. So by using Ukraine and saying that it's affecting, the global market for wheat is incorrect, absolutely incorrect. When we're exporting, we're exporting 26 million tons. We produce 32 million tons. I was sorry about that. I said that we get 26 million tons. We get 32 million tons, and we export 26 million tons. We're left with 6 million tons. And don't ask me how many bushels that is, because wheat, generally they count it by bushels. I learned that from a farmer. But that's one of the things that I went to research. So this way, campaigning, if they allowed me in a debate, which they never did, and that right there is absolutely wrong. That the way the media is, absolutely censored. A lot of people don't know that in 2019 the media laws in Canada were amended from 1954. In 1954, there's this paragraph that says that the media cannot publish fake stories, misleading stories, disinformation. Well, that paragraph they took out. And ever since 2019, you'll notice that the media does not go after government officials. The media puts whatever our government says, that's what is written. And a lot of stories that come out have been debunked. you know, everything has to do with this, is money. And if the financial system is bankrupted, which they're doing a fantastic job at going to bankrupt countries. First country that went bankrupt that we know of in our media is Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka, a lot of people don't know, was on the World Economic Forum website. That was their pet project. They wanted that to go green, lower the emissions, and look what happened. They don't have fuel, they don't have food, they have nothing. Their energy, do they have an energy crisis? You better believe that they do. A lot of people don't know that in Africa, China, a lot of people don't understand that China is a major contender for the world economy. China is pretty much the only country that does not owe money to the IMF and to the World Bank. Technically, they own it. They owe nothing. And why do they owe nothing? Because their currency is backed by gold. It is now. See, when the central banks came out and it's your federal bank, that would be the Bank of Canada. When that came out, that is when inflation started absolutely everywhere. And that was 1944. That's when the World Bank opened its doors. Our bank, the Bank of Canada, I believe it was 1923 is when we ended up having the Bank of Canada. The Royal Mint that we have, that, it makes the coins and everything, that is owned by the Crown Corporation. And a lot of people don't know that. And that has a lot to do with everything, because just prior to Queen Elizabeth II taking the throne in 1953, and there you go, 1953. When was the World Bank created? In 44. Debt started to increase in almost every country on the planet, because now when you collect taxes from your citizens, you have that revenue. That's the money that you have. Now, if your currency is backed by gold, you can only have a certain amount of money that you can spend, because the other money would not be backed by gold. So that's why once they went off the gold standard, countries started plummeting into debt, and massive debt. A perfect example of that would be Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia. That was chopped up into 5 different countries. And one of the main reasons for that was debt, because Yugoslavia did not owe a lot of money to the World Bank at all. But as soon as they chopped that country up and they ended up going to war, each one of the countries right away went into almost $1 trillion in debt. That right there should tell people things, War, debt. Germany, back in, I believe it was in 1922, Germany actually defaulted on a loan payment that they acquired from a different country. And you see that. They borrowed money from a different country because the World Bank did not exist at that time. So every country prior to 1944, if you needed money and you didn't have enough from tax revenues, from people paying their income tax, property tax, all the taxes, if you didn't have enough money to be able to purchase something somewhere, generally you would acquire those goods from that country and you'd go into debt. You wouldn't be, you're not borrowing the money from, say, as an example, we'd use the United States as they're right next door. They didn't borrow money from the United States. Let's just say that we acquired oil from them every year, that 10% of Canada's oil was from the United States. So whatever that amount is, that's what we owe the United States plus interest. And another funny thing is what's happening right now in Canada is, I'm not too sure if you know this, but our government cannot print money. The Bank of Canada, our federal bank, they print the money, and our government legally cannot spend the money that's being printed. So what they do is they're taking money from taxes that people haven't even paid yet. They are prorating the tax for the following year and taking money from the Bank of Canada, using that to give to countries as, like for instance, Ukraine. Ask yourselves this: how many billions of dollars, and I want to know what you think about this, how many billions of dollars has the world, individual countries, since the Ukraine-Russia war started? How many billions did Ukraine get?
Probably close to a trillion, but no?
No, they've gotten about right around 20 billion they've gotten from other countries. Now, they're at war. So that 20 billion that they just got, how are they going to spend that when there's shooting going on? It's not as if you're going to go build a road or build an apartment building. There's a war. So you can't. So what's the 20 billion for? It's not for weapons, because Canada's giving them weapons, the United States, the European Union, everyone's giving them weapons. So they're not paying anything for weapons. They're sending food there. They're sending medical aid. They're sending everything there. What's the $20 billion for? And people need to sit there and really think about it. You've got to go and research this. What are they spending their money on? I know that if I was the Prime Minister of Canada and I was to lend a country like Ukraine, and you know, we've given them billions already. So if I was to give them, say, $2 billion, I want to know what it's for. I want to know where it's being spent, because Ukraine is, they're right up there for crime, for organized crime, trafficking. They've done many stories on Ukraine, and Ukraine is actually ranked in the top 10 most corrupt countries in the world. And you have to understand, in 2014 there was a coup, and that coup was orchestrated by none other than our neighbors. And since then till now, there's been nothing but turmoil in that country. You've got the Donbass and Luhansk, both those two, provinces. They want to be a part of Russia. They do not want to be part of Ukraine, and they can't secede from Russia. So at that time, that's when Russia went in and they annexed Crimea, and they didn't really annex it, considering they own it. So they had a vote, and because of that vote, the West didn't like the vote. They said it was a rigged vote. And when you talk about rigged elections, you got the movie 2000 Mules that shows you how Biden got elected by electoral fraud, and what it can't happen anywhere else. It's happened in dozens of countries, and with these voting machines, I don't like those.
Is it the Dominion machine?
your cellular phones, the smartphones. You've got all the social media sites. You can see the corruption. You can't hide it.
So explain what's come in August.
I can see prices continuing to go up. They're coming out with, obviously this new pandemic of monkeypox. A lot of people don't know that prior to 1980, if you were born between 1960 and 1980, you ended up getting a smallpox shot if your parents had you vaccinated with the MMR, TB, polio. Smallpox was one of those shots that you would take. Now, they did they ended up doing a study in Africa, and they noticed that 9 out of 10 people that were born in those 2 decades, 9 out of 10 did not get monkeypox at all. And they didn't understand why. Now, that 1 out of 10 didn't have the full vaccination, all the shots. They were missing a polio shot, a TB shot, or most likely it was the MMR shot is what they didn't have, mumps, measles, rubella. And those are the ones that were infected with monkeypox. But this is something that our media is not telling us. This is something you have to go and research. I did the research on it because when I heard, conspiracy theories, when I heard back in February when they had the truck convoy, freedom convoy, they started talking about monkeypox as being the next pandemic coming out. And everybody, it's a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy. How is it that all these conspiracy theories are
By design.
they're right? And you know what? Possibly be by design. But you have our governments, they have their, solution to everything. And they have a fascination for vaccines. They just want everybody vaccinated for regardless. And, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you, well, we know that you're not protected because we know that Pfizer released their documents and they even tell you in the documents that you're not protected. It's 12% efficacy is what they say is when you get your injection. It's 12% efficacy for the following 2 weeks. The vaccine does not stop the spread. It does not stop you from getting the disease. I'm not going to mention, we know what we're talking about. It doesn't stop you from contracting it. And if you look up to, in the dictionary under the definition of vaccine, it actually says that it builds your immunity to stop you from getting 1 to several viruses, that you cannot get them. Anyone that's gotten an MMR shot will not get mumps, measles, or rubella in your life. And that's a fact. You get the TB shot, you will not get tuberculosis in your life. Your polio vaccine, you will not get polio ever in your life. But, smallpox, same. You will not get it. That is a vaccine. You can't catch it, therefore, you can't transmit it.
Okay. Now explain the nitrogen and how they're getting rid of fertilizer.
Good question. Now, we need fertilizer. And, nobody's saying this. You have to think. Ask a farmer. Go and ask a farmer what they think about this 30% reduction. We are carbon-based life forms. Everybody needs CO2 and nitrogen to grow. Plants need it to grow. Crops need it to grow. Animals need it to grow. We as humans need it to grow. It's a part of development. And our atmosphere is CO2. They tell you, and NASA said that from the Earth's gravitational pull, the way our Earth is spinning, it naturally produces CO2. And what's funny, John, is on the radio I was listening to AM 800, and there was a scientist on, which I thought was absolutely said that the James Webb has found a planet that's just it's in the same system with Jupiter, and that planet has CO2 and nitrogen. And he actually comes out and he says that the planet needs to have CO2. If it needs CO2, why are you going to reduce it? Does that make sense? Nitrogen. It's fertilizer. You need that for crops to grow for us to eat food. Without it, we do not eat. What are you going to eat? Crickets? Grasshoppers? What are you going to eat? You got fish. We can go fishing. You can eat anything that comes out of the water, pretty much. But that's a must. This is what you need. And farmers, there's a farmer. His name is, and this is his actual name. He's got a Twitter video. He has a TikTok video. I believe it's on his YouTube channel. And his name is, I believe it's Dave Quick McDick. But if you look up Quick McDick, he's a farmer. He's in the prairies. His video is absolutely fabulous. And I personally, after I watch this guy needs to be the agricultural minister of Canada. This guy knows what he's talking about. Our agriculture minister that we actually have has no background in agriculture whatsoever. Our national defense minister, Mr. I believe it's Dave McCullough, he was an actual farmer and he was a businessman and he became an MP. He ran, he got in, he became an MP. He had no political background because I don't think that you need to know any type of politics to run for office. You know, an MP, what's an MP's job? They are there to communicate with their constituents, the community, to find out. They ask you, John, what do you think about, you know, gas going up? Or what do you think about, you know, we want to cut the nitrogen emissions. We want to cut that. So his job, you know, he comes back and John is, you know, he's my voter. I got in because John and his family voted for me and everyone voted for me. So my job as an MP is Monday to Thursday, you're in Ottawa. On Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're back and you're riding in your community where you were elected. And you're supposed to sit there and ask the people what they think. How do they want you to vote on a certain bill, a certain motion? Do they want yes or no? When does an MP come back to your community and actually ask you what you want to vote? Because here, I know in Windsor they haven't ever asked us anything. Neither has our MPP, and that's the job of an MPP also. Your MPP is provincial, your MP is federal, but both almost have the exact same authority in our parliament. Not quite the same, but it's very close. One of the only differences is their salary, and that's it.
What's your take on all the elites buying all the property around the world?
Everybody knows the Great Reset. Everyone said this was a conspiracy theory. The man, Klaus Schwab, wrote a book called The Great Reset. And a lot of people have not read that book, nor are they going to read the book. And anyone that takes excerpts out of that book and tells people certain things, they right away, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, it's in the book. And in that book, he talks about depopulation. It's a fact, you know, and now you have that World Economic Forum is purchasing land everywhere, as is Bill Gates. What is Bill Gates doing with his land? Nothing. It's vacant. He started now building cricket farms because that's what they plan to feed us, is crickets. Those elites, these people have billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And let me tell you something. You don't think that these guys own farms? They're going to continuously eat beef, have chicken, and eat what you're supposed to eat. A lot of people don't think about that, but look at Bill Gates. How much farmland does he own? How many farms do you think he has? I guarantee he's got many farms, and his family is not going to be eating crickets and grasshoppers, not going to be eating bugs. That's what is planned for us. Where's your nutritional value eating? Oh, hang on, there's a cricket. Wow, that tastes great.
There is some protein in it. Very little.
This is what they say. You pay a scientist enough money, as they do, they will tell you anything that they're told to tell you. It's the simple fact of it's money. Do you want to live poor? Do you want to live rich? Everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants to be able to do what they want when they want, go where they want. But, realistically, that's just not how life is. It's not how life should be. And I have a solution to fix everything. It's a lot of people that I've told, well, not a lot, people that I've told, out of let's say 5 people, 2 of them have said that would be a great idea and it would work great. The other 3 told me, keep dreaming. So, when you hear it, it sounds unrealistic, but when you actually really think about it, everybody on the planet would have a roof over their head, they'd have food in their stomach, have clothes to wear, you'd have absolute freedom to live anywhere you want, travel anywhere you want, just by following a few different steps that I think mankind should. But in Holland, the World Economic Forum has made a deal with the Dutch government to buy up all the farmland that they're forcing people off their land. They've raised the carbon tax, they've raised all of these taxes that affects the farmers the most because they're the ones producing the food. So if you raise those taxes, these farmers, their energy bills, and it was on Twitter, it was not on the news. We had this one farmer have an energy bill of $239,000 for 1 month. And this is in Europe, and this is in Holland. $239,000. How do you think that farmer's going to pay for that? England, they're offering farmers in England, they're bribing them. They're going to give them what the land is worth, plus another £100,000 for them to sell the land to the government, to sell it to the World Economic Forum.
So the narrative is, if they own it, they won't grow on it, so we
Correct.
can't feed nobody.
And the reason why they don't want to grow anything is because they're using climate change, which does not exist. But they're doing that. They're taxing everybody. It is a money grab, and when people start to really realize that it's a money grab, maybe that's what it takes for everything to change. But change is coming a lot sooner than people think. It's just more people need to be aware. More people need to participate. These protests, they were for mandates, to get rid of mandates. They were not anti-vaccine mandate. That's not what they were protesting. They were protesting, they just don't want the mandates. These truck drivers wanted to be able to cross the border into the United States without having to get an experimental injection, is what they wanted. That's all they wanted. But you saw what happened. You have our police that swore an oath to serve and protect the people that work for the people. They don't work for our government. Our people pay them. Our taxes pay the police. And beating non-violent protesters is, wow.
So what's your take on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, how AI is going to take care of everything with the, what's it called,
AI is not going to take care of
in the
anything.
future? in the future with robots and
Can't.
cameras everywhere and replacing people
That's in a great reset of the book about mass surveillance, having video cameras everywhere.
everywhere.
Right now where we're sitting, there would be probably a dozen cameras here in this park to film us. And you know, maybe I'm not allowed to drink coffee that day, and this would hurt my social credit score, and perhaps I wouldn't be able to start my electric vehicle. You have to think of this, folks. If everybody drove an electric vehicle and everyone plugs it into charge, that takes energy, takes power out of the grid. We don't have enough power to take out of the grid. So what happens? Blackouts. We just saw what happened with Rogers. This is the second time in almost a year. It's about a year and a half. Second time Rogers went down for 24 hours, almost 24 hours. The first time I believe it was 22 hours. And this second time was 18 to 20, right around there. And you couldn't use ATM cards. There were some people that could not start a certain EV car. I'm not going to say what company it was. They could not access their car because of a cellular. This is for your cell phone. What does that have to do with a bank? For an ATM card not to work? What does that have to do with that? But nobody had their phone. So you got no phone, no money, and some people you can't even access your car. And what are you going to do? You need food. You don't have any food. You're planning on shopping on that day, but you couldn't because you can't access anything. Sure, you got to go to the bank to pull out money. Everybody did. Banks don't hold that type of money for people to come in there. And if you have, say, 5,000 people go to the bank to try to pull out, say, $500, that bank does not have that much money. It's not going to happen. And no power, no AI. Power goes out. These cameras, they don't function. They function on power. Yes, they have backup generators. They have backup batteries. But that can only last for so long. And if you're using that much energy out of the grid, you're going to take energy out of that backup battery that they have, because that is going to be hooked into the grid. It has to be. It's got to be hooked in to power it. So you don't have that. Computers that had Rogers for internet, no going to the internet. Everything that can be affected by Rogers was affected for an entire day. And it caused a lot of commotion everywhere in Canada. So think about it, AI. How long are those batteries going to last? These robots. A lot of those robots have their own battery packs. Yes, our technology is really advanced, and that battery could last that robot for, let's say, a few months before either the battery needs to be replaced or recharged. What happens when your power continuously keeps going out? In Europe, they keep going out because of oil. That's what they say. But if you have a country like Canada, where we have more supply than demand, there's no way that the gas prices can be as high as they are. It's an impossibility. And that is your future. An impossibility. That's what they're trying to make, is the impossible possible by reduction in everything. And they want to reduce the population. That's how you reduce carbon and nitrogen, because our bodies contain both. We actually have 3% nitrogen in our bodies. You can get rid of 3% off every human that dies.
And it reduces carbon footprint as well, right?
And they've got that carbon footprint. They want to monitor every single person's carbon footprint. They want to know where you're going, what you're eating, to know how much carbon you're consuming.
Again, that's for the climate control as well, right?
And they're saying that it's for climate change.
Climate change.
That's what they're saying. For climate change, global warming, that they need to know where we eat, what we drink, when do we drink, when do we eat, where do we travel. They want to know everything. Everything that we consider private, they're going to have full access to. There'll be cameras in your home, watching you in your home.
There are now. Isn't your video eye is a camera as well?
Well, you've got a big conspiracy theory before was that the Chinese were putting in video cameras in your LCD TVs when the LCDs came out and the plasmas came out, that there were actual cameras inside. And they actually took some of the TVs apart and they actually did find multiple cameras that were in the TVs. And what did they do? It was in the news just for a couple days and that went away. But this was a couple of days. This is back in, 2000 and, I'm trying to think when the first plasma came out. It was in 2000 and, no, I think like 2005, 2004. That's when I know that I ended up buying an LG back then. And I know it was prior from me moving from Vancouver back to Ontario.
Okay.
And I know that plasmas were already out, so I know that it's 204 for sure. If not, I think maybe 2003 is when they started coming out. And your monitor, your web camera that you have,
Video eye.
yeah, your webcam, they can turn on that anytime they want.
That's why there's a little shutter on it, so you can shut it off,
Their
right?
cell phone
Cell phone
has
as
a
well.
camera. They can access and turn on the camera in this phone.
You're being followed everywhere in the world.
How much
What's your
privacy do you
camera?
really have? How much do you really have right now?
Everything
Right
you
now.
do, everything is documented.
How much privacy do you have right now? Let alone what they're planning to do right now. At the street lights. Cameras. Video cameras in every store. And that is something that you gain access to. Because these stores are all pretty much hooked up to the internet, to Wi-Fi, where they have their signal, they can watch you. And who says they need a warrant?
Absolutely. Any final thoughts to wrap this up? Nick Babic has his own YouTube station, so
I got a YouTube channel. I've got my TikTok channel, and it's the name for it is Your Choice 1-4 p.m. is what my TikTok channel is. That's my Twitter channel, my Twitter account. My YouTube channel, you just type in Nick Babic and it'll take you to my page.
Well, thanks for having me on Plug and Play.
How things are going to be, I'm going to tell you.
Final thoughts?
Final thoughts is what everyone thinks is going to happen. Is going to be a mass worldwide revolution. And it's going to be shooting and killing. That is unavoidable. That is exactly what's going to happen.
When's that going to take place? In how many years? How many months?
It's months, not years, that's for sure. When they try the next lockdown is when it's going to start. That's when violence is going to start. And from that point, depending upon which country you live in, how the government is in that country, if it's a dictatorship, totalitarian, authoritarian, like how Canada is now. Canada's not a democracy. That's done. That's finished. And Trudeau makes sure that that's done. Because he's the one that's calling the shots. You're ignoring your citizens. They come and protest. 20,000. Doesn't come out. Not one politician came out at the beginning. Then some politicians came out to get photo ops. And then those politicians decided to switch sides. But they didn't vote to switch sides because they ended up passing a unanimous vote, and that was for the Emergencies Act, and it also was to seize people's money, and it was to seize the fuel, the wood. to seize that illegally. But they unanimously voted to do it. And you've got some of those people that voted yes to do it are saying that they voted no. How did you vote no when it was a unanimous vote? And then when you go to the Parliament, our government website, you go to their voting records, voting on bills and motions, and you can see right there exactly who voted yay or nay. And Jagmeet Singh ends up coming out. He's on Twitter every single day. The guy is coming out and saying, you guys are paying too much, and these big corporations aren't paying their share. The rich aren't paying their share. We need to do something about it. Well, they came up with a vote to, it was like sort of like not a fund, but it was to give people money, and he voted no. The guy voted against it. Yet he's on Twitter, sitting there and telling you these things, and then he votes against it. And that's just a hypocrite. But what's coming is that's what's coming. That book, The Great Reset. He wrote a book, but these people are enacting it. He's not guilty. He wrote a book, and because world leaders from everywhere are doing what he wrote in the book, he's not responsible for it. And this is something our world leaders just don't get. Because when that push comes to shove, you think that he is going to take any type of blame for this? Absolutely not. The blame falls on you. Right on you. To all you members of Parliament that may or may not be watching this, the blame goes to you. He will throw you into the fire to save his own skin. Don't think that he wouldn't, because he would do the exact same thing if you were in his position. Think of it that way. But it's unavoidable. You already have Sri Lanka, which the citizens non-violently stormed the president's palace, and that president now is gone. Panama, same thing has happened in Panama, where the citizens had enough, but they actually battled the police. The police fought with the citizens, and they lost. And I haven't heard anything from Panama on social media at all, so I don't know what's happening there. You've got Holland they're at the tipping point where the farmers said that they will start a revolution. A revolution is fighting, is weapons. They said that they're not going to concede. And I don't know how Rudd is still the prime minister there. In England, you've got mass police now out on the street, because things in England have hit it's at the boiling point. They're doing the same thing, in Canada now. Now they have the 30% reduction for fertilizer, for nitrogen. And people just don't understand. We need fertilizer to grow food for us to eat. So think what 30% less for you is going to do. 30% less. It's
Compounded through the years.
It's not 50. It's 30. It's pretty close. You have to look at it, and you have to look at all of this with an open mind. You cannot sit there and say, well, this is what the media has told us. This is what our government is telling us. How many times has the government lied to you? Countless numbers of times. How many times has the media lied to you? Countless numbers of times. But this time they're telling the truth. This time is different. It's not different. They make it look like it's different, but it's the same. Just a different circumstance. Because all the governments in the world, they create the problem. What do we have right now? We have a problem with 30% reduction. They created the problem. Now they're looking at the reaction. And guess what? They come up with a solution, because only they can come up with a solution. We can't. John and I cannot. Even if we were members of Parliament, we're still not going to be able to come up with that solution, because that solution is going to come from, since the liberals are in power, it's going to come from that cabinet. That's where the solution comes from. And then they're going to be the, the savior. Well, they're the ones that started everything. How many times do they have to create the problem, let it play out, and then come, have that solution? They've done it too many times. One time is too many, because they are elected by the people, but they don't want to talk to the people. They won't talk to us. They'll protest. They will not come out and talk at all to anyone.
They'll dictate. Okay, Dick, Babic, you heard it. Encyclopedia of knowledge and the New World Order. So stay tuned for our next episode. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Today we have Nick